The Third Mansion, Chapter 1. The saint shows what little security we can have while we live in this exile, though we may have reached a high degree of perfection, etc. To those who, through the goodness of God, have conquered in these combats, and by perseverance have reached the third mansions, what shall we say but these words, "Blessed is the man that feareth the Lord"? His Majesty has conferred no small favor upon me by making me now understand, for otherwise I have little ability for such things, the meaning of these words in my own tongue. With reason do we truly call him blessed, since, as far as we can understand, unless he turn back, he is secure in his salvation. Here you see, sisters, how important it is to have conquered in the former battles, for I consider it certain that our Lord never fails to place him who has arrived so far in security of conscience, and this is no small happiness. I said, in security of conscience, but I spoke incorrectly, for there is none in this life, and, therefore, always understand my meaning to be, except he forsake the way he has begun, there is no security. It is, indeed, a very great misery to live in this life where we must always be like those who have their enemies at the gate, who can neither eat nor sleep, but are obliged always to have their arms continually in their hands, always to be in anxiety and fear, lest the enemy make a breach on some side or other, and become masters of the castle. O my Lord and my God, how canst thou wish that a life so miserable should be loved? It is impossible for us to avoid wishing and requesting to be taken out of it, were it not for the hope of losing it for thy sake, or spending it entirely in thy service, and, above all, because we know it is thy pleasure we should live in it. If this be so, my God, let us die with thee, as St. Thomas said, since to live without thee, and in the fear of being possible to lose thee forever, is nothing else than to die many times. I tell you, therefore, my daughters, that the blessedness we must ask for is to be at last in security with the blessed. For amidst these fears, what pleasure can he have who finds no pleasure except in pleasing God? Consider that some of the saints have had a much greater fear than this, and yet they have fallen into grievous sin. Nor are we sure that if we fall, God will stretch out his hand, I mean his especial assistance, to draw us out of them, and that we shall do penance as those saints did. I assure you, my daughters, while I am writing these words, I am so seized with fear that I neither know how I write nor how I live when I reflect on this subject, and this I very often do. Pray, my daughters, that His Majesty may ever live in me, for otherwise, what security can such a life as mine have, which has been so wicked? Be not afflicted on hearing it has been so, as I have sometimes seen you, when I have thus spoken to you. This comes from your desiring that I should be very holy, and you have reason, for so do I desire. But what can I do if I lose this holiness through my own fault? I cannot complain of God, that He has not given me sufficient help for the accomplishment of your desires. I cannot speak thus without tears, nor without extreme confusion, when I see myself writing for those who can even teach me. This is a hard obedience. May our Lord grant that as it has been performed for His sake, it may in some way prove beneficial to you. And if for nothing else, may it help you to beg pardon of our Lord for this miserable sinner who is so presumptuous. But His Majesty knows I can only presume on His mercy, and, since I cannot help having been what I was, I have no other remedy but to have recourse to His mercy, and to trust in the merits of His Son, and of the Blessed Virgin His Mother, whose habit you and I wear, though most unworthy of it. Thank Him that you are truly the daughters of this lady, and therefore, having so good a mother, you must not be ashamed of my being so bad. Imitate her, and imagine what the greatness of this lady must be, and what a great honor it is to have her for our patroness. For my sins, and being such a wretched creature as I am, have not been able to tarnish this holy order in the least. But I wish to warn you against one thing, viz., not to be too secure, because the order is such, or because you have such a mother. For David was a great saint, yet you know what Solomon proved. Neither should you make much account of the enclosure and penance in which you live, nor let your always conversing with God, or your continual exercise of prayer make you secure, nor your being so much separated from the world, nor your abhorring worldly things. All this is very good, but not sufficient, as I have said, to free us from fear. Often then, remember and meditate on this verse. Blessed is the man who feareth the Lord. Having digressed much, I know not what I was saying, and when I reflect on myself, I am unable to mention anything good, and therefore I will not say any more now on that subject. Returning then to what I began to say respecting souls who have come into the third mansions, I consider this to be no small favor which our Lord has bestowed upon them, but rather a very extraordinary one, viz., that they have overcome the first difficulties. I believe there are many such souls in the world, who, through the goodness of our Lord, are extremely desirous of not offending His Majesty, who keep themselves from venial sin, are lovers of penance and of their hours of recollection and prayer, who spend their time well, and are exercised in works of charity towards their neighbor, who are very regular in their actions and the government of their house, such at least as have families. This is indeed a very desirable state, and there seems to be no reason why these should be denied entrance into the very last mansion, nor will our Lord deny it to them, if they be willing, for this is an excellent disposition to induce Him to show them all kind of favors. O Jesus, who will not exclaim that he is desirous of so great a happiness, especially as he has already conquered the greatest difficulties? Every one must desire it. We all say we desire it, but as something more is required in order that our Lord may take entire possession of the soul, it is not enough to say these words, just as it was not sufficient for that young man whom our Lord asked if he would be perfect. Ever since I began to speak of these mansions, methinks I see him, for our case resembles his. Hence, in a great measure, proceed these great aridities in prayer, though there may be other causes also. I do not speak now of certain internal afflictions, very intolerable, which some good souls endure without any fault of theirs, out of which our Lord always delivered them with great gain to them. Neither do I speak of those who are troubled with melancholy and other infirmities. We must not pry into the judgments of God. My opinion is, that what I have mentioned is generally the cause of them. For as these souls see that they would not on any account commit a mortal sin, and many would not willfully commit even a venial sin, and that they spend their lives well, and make a good use of their property, they cannot with patience endure that the gate should be shut against them, by which they might come into the chamber where the king is, whose servants they consider themselves, and they are really so. But though earthly kings have many subjects, yet they cannot all enter his chamber. Enter, enter, my daughters, into your interior, and pass beyond those miserable works of yours, which, on account of your being Christians, you are bound to perform, and much more also. Let it be sufficient that you are God's subjects. Be not desirous of much more. Consider the saints who have entered into the chamber of this king, and you will see by their lives what a difference there is between them and us. Do not demand that which you have not merited, for whatever service we do, we must not think we can merit it, we who have offended God. Oh, humility, humility! I know not what temptation has come upon me herein, for I cannot help believing but that he who heeds these aridities is in some way wanting in this virtue. I do not wish, as I said, to speak of those great internal afflictions whereof I have already said, that they show a far greater want of humility. Let us try ourselves, sisters, or let our Lord try us. He can best do it, though we often do not desire to understand it. Coming to those souls who are so well disposed, let us see what they do for God, and we shall soon find we have no reason to complain of His Majesty. For if we turn our back on Him, and go away sad, like the young man in the Gospel, when he tells us what we are to do in order to arrive at perfection, what do we wish His Majesty to do, who will give a reward in proportion to the love we bear Him? This love, my daughters, must not be built on our own fancy, but proved by works. Yet do not think He stands in need of our works. He only wants a resolute will. We must not imagine, because we wear the habit of religion, which we have voluntarily taken, and have abandoned all earthly things for God's sake, though they may be only like the poor nets of St. Peter, He gives much, however, who gives all he hath. That therefore we have done everything. This is indeed a good disposition, if we persevere in it, and return no more among the insects of the first rooms, though merely in desire. But no doubt she will obtain her object if she persevere in this nakedness and abandonment of all things. But it must be on this condition, and remember I reminded you of it before, that she consider herself to be an unprofitable servant, as Christ has said, and think not that our Lord is thereby obliged to bestow such favors upon her, but rather that she, having received more, is the more indebted to him. What can we do for so powerful a God, who died for us, who created us, and continually gives us being, that we should not esteem ourselves happy in discharging some part of what we owe him, who has given us so much and served us? These words I used unwillingly. I mean served us, yet it is true, since he did nothing else all the time he lived in the world, without our asking him for fresh favors and pleasures. Consider well, my daughters, some points which I have here marked out for you, though somewhat obscurely, not knowing how to express them better. Our Lord will make you understand them, that you may draw humility from aridities, and not restlessness, for this the devil aims at. Believe me, that wherever this virtue is really found, though our Lord may give no delights at all, yet he will bestow a certain peace and conformity, which will satisfy you more than pleasures and favors do, since, as you have heard and read, His Majesty often bestows such favors on the weakest, though I think they would not change these pleasures for the greater strength of those who encounter aridities. We are greater lovers of pleasure than of the cross. Do thou, O Lord, who understandeth the truth of things, try us, that so we may know ourselves.